stuffed grape leaves, as we call them dolmas. If you ever wanted to make them home but talked yourself out of it because the rolling seemed too fussy, or you were not sure how much filling to use, or you just did not know where to start, this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through every single step. The filling, the ratio, the rolling technique, how tight, how loose, how long to cook them, everything. By the time we're done, you will have a pot full of dolmas that taste like they came from a neighborhood restaurant in Istanbul, and you will know exactly how to make them again. Hello friend, I'm Ayşegül, the cook behind Foolproof Living. I share approachable, well-tested recipes inspired by my Mediterranean roots with simple techniques all designed for real life. I have been eating dolmas since before I could roll them, and today I'm going to teach you everything my mom taught me. If you're ready to cook with confidence, subscribe to my channel and let's cook together. Okay, before we start, let's talk about the star of the show, grape leaves. If you're lucky enough to have access to fresh grape leaves, go ahead and use them. If you're new to it, I included the step-by-step instructions for preparing them in the blog post. But since jarred grape leaves in brine are available pretty much everywhere all year round, that's what I'm going to use today. As I was working on this recipe, I tested 3 different brands. They were all good, but I think my favorite one was Orlando, a California-based brand you can find at major supermarkets or even online. What matters most when choosing jarred grape leaves is the saltiness and texture of the leaves. Orlando's leaves were perfectly balanced, not too salty, not too thick to be chewy, and not too soft to fall apart during rolling. Moving on to rice. Traditional dolma is made with short grain rice, and the reason is simple. The higher starch content gives the filling a richer, more substantial texture. In Turkey, where I grew up, most people use baldo rice, a short grain Turkish variety that is plump, starchy, and absolutely perfect for dolma. But since this can be hard to track down here in the US, I use arborio, which works beautifully as a substitute. That said, don't let the type of rice slow you down. I've also tested this regular enriched long grain rice and it worked. Maybe the filling was just not quite as rich, but it was still very good. All right, let's get rolling, literally. We'll start with the leaves. Go ahead and open your jar and carefully pull the leaves out. Fair warning here, getting them out is a bit of an arm workout and requires a bit of jiggling, but once you have them out, you should have 2 large bunches in there. Each bunch gives you about 30 to 35 leaves, which means you have roughly 70 in total. As you unfold them, keep an eye on for torn or oversized ones and set those aside. We'll use them later to line the bottom of the pot. Now, before we rinse them, I want to show you a little trick my mom taught me, which I think is a great time saver. As you open the bunches, you'll see that they're folded with their stems facing in the same direction. Most people cut the stems one by one, which you absolutely can do, but my mom would keep those stacks, line them up, usually 7 to 8 leaves together, and cut them all at once with kitchen scissors. This way you don't have to stop and cut every leaf before you stuff it, obviously much faster. Once all the stems are removed, we'll transfer the leaves to a colander, set inside a large bowl, pour hot tap over them, and let them soak for about 1 to 2 minutes. Now, how long to soak depends on the saltiness of your leaves, and that obviously varies by brand. So after soaking, go ahead and taste one leaf. If it still tastes quite salty, give it one more rinse. You want to remove the excess salt, but keep some of that briny flavor because, let's face it, that's what makes dolma taste like dolma. We'll drain them and set them aside. For the filling, we'll start with the rice. Place 3/4 of a cup of arborio rice in a fine mesh strainer and rinse it under hot tap water until water runs clear for about a minute. Some people soak the rice as well, mostly to shorten the cooking time, but you don't really need to do that in this recipe. Once it drains, we'll transfer it to a large bowl along with 1 pound of ground beef, 1 large finely chopped onion, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, ½ cup of fresh dill, ½ cup of fresh parsley, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and a half a teaspoon of allspice. Now, a couple of things here. I use 85% lean ground beef, but you can use 80% lean as well. It will actually be more delicious because, let's face it, there's more fat. In terms of fresh herbs, the traditional recipe relies heavily on parsley and dill, but if you have some, you can add a handful of chopped fresh mint as well. And finally, for the spices, my mom always added salt and pepper, but some modern versions of this recipe add allspice, and I think it's a wonderful addition, though it's optional. Once everything is in the bowl, we'll mix it with clean hands until it is evenly combined. Then check that the filling holds together when you press it. Now, I want to give you a heads up here. When you first start mixing, the filling is going to feel quite dry. And I know the instinct is to add a splash of oil or a little water. Really don't. It's completely normal and exactly how it should be at this stage. The moisture comes from the cooking liquid later, and the cooked dolmas will perfectly juicy inside, so just trust the process. Now let's get the pot ready. We need a large pot with a tight fitting lid. I tested this recipe with both a 4-quart and a 5.5-quart Dutch oven, and while both work, I prefer the 5.5-quart because it gives you more room to arrange the dolmas comfortably, but honestly, any large pot with a lid will do. We'll lightly brush the bottom and the sides with olive oil, then we'll take those reserved torn or oversized leaves we set aside earlier and use them to line the entire bottom of the pot. Now, you might be wondering, why line the bottom at all? 2 reasons. First, it protects the dolmas from sitting directly on the heat, which prevents sticking. Second, those leaves act as a little cushion and keep everything in place while they cook. Now, one more thing here. You may have seen some people line the bottom with vegetables like tomatoes, sliced onions, or sliced potatoes. Or for example, in Turkey, for special occasions, they line it with lamb chops, which braise slowly underneath the dolmas and come out incredibly tender, like truly delicious. You can do that if you prefer. I chose to keep things simple, but know that it's an option. All right, let's move on to rolling, the part that everyone is nervous about. But honestly, don't be, because once you roll your first 2 or 3, it will click, and I promise you won't want to stop. Here's how we do it. Place 1 grape leaf shiny side down on a cutting board. Then take about 1 to 1.5 teaspoon of filling and place it in the center near the stem end. I like to shape it into a little cylinder about 1.5 to 2 inches long, so it is distributed evenly across the leaf. First, fold the sides of the leaf over the filling, then roll from the bottom up just like a little burrito. And that's it. Place it seam side down in the pot so it stays closed during cooking. Usually in most Mediterranean households, dolma is a team effort. I usually ask my husband to join me, but whoever is around can help. The rest is pretty much doing the same thing over and over again. And honestly, this is the part that takes the most time. Now, one question people always ask is, how tight should you roll it? The answer really depends. In Turkey, you will hear some say it should be thin as a pencil, while others prefer them on the fuller side. My answer is tight enough that the rice has room to expand during cooking. Too tight and they will burst open. Too loose and they will unravel when they're cooking. I promise you will find your sweet spot within the first few rolls. As you roll, place each dolma seam side down directly into the pot, arranging them in a tight spiral pattern. Now, does it have to be a spiral pattern? No, my mom always did that way, and that's why I like to do it. But as long as they are snugly packed, you can arrange them in any way you like. We ended up with about 30 to 35 dolmas per layer in my 5.5-quart pot, which gave me 2 full layers and a little bit for the 3rd layer. But depending on the size of your leaves, you may end up with a few more or a few less, and if you need a 3rd layer like we did, go for it, that's completely fine. Once all the dolmas are in the pot, we'll place an inverted plate directly on top of them. We do this because it keeps them in place and prevents them from floating or unraveling once we add the cooking liquid. Now let's make the cooking liquid. In a measuring cup, we'll whisk together 2 cups of boiling water, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. I'm keeping things simple here and using water, but if you want a richer, deeper flavor, feel free to swap it out for chicken stock or vegetable broth. Both work beautifully. Also, I use boiling water here on purpose because it jumpstarts the cooking process, so everything comes to a simmer much faster than if you started with cold water. We'll carefully pour that over the dolmas. The goal is to have enough liquid that it comes up around the sides of the rolls without fully covering the top layer. Okay, one more important thing here. The size of your pot directly affects how much liquid you need. So rather than going strictly by the cup measurement, use your eyes. You want to see the liquid coming up around the sides of the dolmas, not drowning them. To cook, we'll cover the pot with the lid and cook them over medium heat. It should come to a boil in about 5 to 6 minutes, so keep an eye on it because it will happen faster than you think. Once boiling, we'll reduce the heat to medium-low and cook for about 30 minutes. Then we'll carefully remove the plate, pour about 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice over the dolmas and put the lid back on. No need to put the plate back at this point. The stuffed grape leaves are now heavy enough to stay in place on their own. We'll continue cooking on medium-low for another 30 minutes, but be sure to keep a close eye on it because we want to make sure there's enough liquid in there. Once the 30 minutes are up, you can check Dolmas by cutting one dolma in half. If the rice and meat look fully cooked, you're good to go. We'll turn the heat off and let them rest for 20 minutes before serving. And let me tell you, this is not optional because this resting time is what allows any remaining liquid to be absorbed, so every dolma comes out perfectly moist. Think of it like resting rice after it cooks. Pretty much the same idea and same result. All right, now is the moment we all been waiting for. You can absolutely serve it as is with a few lemon wedges, but if you want to do it as we do, you'd want to go get some Greek yogurt and mix it with a clove of minced garlic, a handful of chopped dill or mint, a squeeze of lemon juice, and some salt. And when it's time to serve, I like to serve about 10 to 12 per person, and let's face it, that's a generous portion. Add a spoonful of that yogurt sauce on top, and if you have some, a sprinkle of sumac. Oh, and the generous squeeze of lemon juice on top. That's a wrap for me today. As always, you can find more information on how to make this ahead, store leftovers, freeze, some traditional ways of serving it, alongside with some side dish ideas on the blog. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Go ahead and come back. No. Okay, 1, 2. Pour hot top over top. Tap. Uh-oh. This is gonna be a tough one. No, just acknowledge the camera first. Team effort. No, effort. Sorry. First acknowledge the camera.